Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. I'm your host, DelightedMammal, and today we're going to be looking at the Battle of Verdun. Now, I know the gameplay footage here that I have for you is not the Battle of Verdun, but I figure I'd just throw it in here just to entertain you guys. That way you don't feel bored while you're listening to my gorgeous voice. So, here we go. Let's get started. Oh, excuse me. So the Battle of Verdun lasted 9 months, 3 weeks, and 6 days. It took place from the 21st of February 1916 until the 18th of December 1916. This battle was fought by the French army, the French forces and the German Empire. It was the largest and longest battle of the First World War on the Western Front between the German and French armies. The battle took place on the hills of North Verdun-sur-Meuse in northeastern France. So the Germans had the 5th Army, which attacked the defenses of the fortified region of Verdun, and the French had the 2nd Army, which were stationed on the right bank of Meuse. So in this battle there were 2 banks. You had the west bank, which was the left bank, and then the right bank, which was the east bank. So keep that in mind while I'm kind of reading this to you guys here. So, the Germans were kind of inspired by the Second Battle of Champagne, which took a year before the Battle of Verdun. And they wanted to use their quick, strategic, and fast-moving kind of tactics against the French army. That way, they would suffer as many casualties and they would have the tactical advantage against the French armies. But the Germans planned to rapidly capture, the Meuse Heights, providing them with an excellent defensive position that would also allow them to bombard Verdun with observed artillery fire. So when they have thousands of forces running towards French lines and they have scouts that see, oh hey, there's a strategic position that the French have, let's bombard the hell out of that. So they bombard the hell out of that, and then the French can't do anything about it. They suffer major casualties. Then the Germans capture it. So then what the Germans would do, they would turn around and say, okay, here's what the French are going to do. They're going to come back, they're going to recapture this, but we're going to trap them and make that point a strategic annihilation against the French, so the French would lose more casualties than the Germans, which was a really, really smart idea. But the Germans also used these traps numerous times against the French to have the French suffer major casualties like that, which is a pretty cool idea, by the way. The Germans hoped that the French would commit their strategic reserve, like I said, to recapture the position and suffer catastrophic losses in a battle of annihilation. Okay, and this was not costly for the Germans, but for the French, because the Germans had the tactical advantage. Okay, now the battle was supposedly to take place before the 21st of February, but due to poor weather, the Germans could not attack, so they had to wait till the weather cleared up, and then they could move on. But the Germans enjoyed the initial success, capturing Fort Douaumont in the first 3 days of the offensive. Afterwards, the German advance slowed, despite many French casualties. By the 6th of March, 20 and a half French divisions were in the RFV, okay, and a more extensive defense in depth had been constructed. Pétain ordered that no withdrawals were to be made and that the counterattacks were to be conducted despite exposing French infantry to fire from the German artillery. Pétain was one of the commanders during the battle at that time for the French armies, but he said there will be no retreat. We are going to have as many counterattacks as we need to take back those positions, especially Fort Douaumont. They really needed Fort Douaumont because Fort Douaumont was a major strategic position, and whoever held that point had the tactical advantage. And at that point, the Germans had they had taken Fort Douaumont from the French. So that way, the French, they're kind of crippled a little bit without that fort, if that makes sense. So, with Pétain ordering no withdrawals, by the 29th of March, French artillery on the west bank, which is the left bank, had begun a constant bombardment of German positions on the east bank, which is the right bank. which caused many German infantry casualties. In March, the German offensive was extended to the left-west bank, like I said, of the Meuse to gain observation of the ground from which French artillery had been firing. They had been firing over the river onto the Meuse heights. The Germans were able to advance at first, but the French reinforcements contained the attacks short of their objectives. So I don't think the Germans at that point were expecting the French to come in and kind of beat them up a little bit. So the Germans were not able to take that, which is a good tactical advantage for the French because the French just pushed back the German forces from that point. In early May, the Germans changed tactics and made local attacks and counterattacks, which gave the French an opportunity to begin an attack against Fort Douaumont. So while the Germans are rethinking their strategy over there, the French are like, okay, this is now our opportunity to take back our fort and gain back that tactical advantage, which is quite nice. So part of the fort was occupied until a German counterattack recaptured the fort and took numerous prisoners. So now the French not only are suffering casualties, but now they're suffering prisoners of war. Which is a problem because now they can't get these guys back until they retake their men back or the war ends. So now they're down a bunch of men. The Germans changed tactics again, alternating their attacks on both banks of the Meuse, and in June they captured the Fort Fox. I think that's how you pronounce that, so excuse me if it's not. The Germans continued the offensive beyond Vaux towards the last geographical objectives of the original plan at, I think you pronounce it, Fleury-Devant-Douaumont and Fort Sable. The Germans drove a salient into the French defenses, captured Fleury, and became within 4 kilometers, which is roughly 2.5 miles of the Verdun citadel. And yes, I did just do that math in my head. So in July of 1916, the German offensive was reduced to provide artillery and infantry reinforcements for the Somme front and during local operations. The village of Fleury changed hands 16 times from the 23rd of June to the 17th of August. That's crazy. A German attempt to capture Fort Souville, I think that's how you pronounce it, in early July was repulsed by artillery and small arms fire. To supply reinforcements for the Somme front, the German offensive was reduced further, and attempts were made to deceive the French into expecting more attacks. That was to keep the French reinforcements away from the Somme. In August and December, French counteroffensive recaptured much of the ground lost on the east bank and recovered Fort Douaumont and Fort Vaux. Like I said, the battle lasted for 303 days and became not only the longest and largest battle of the First World War, but also the most costly battle in human history. Oh my goodness. So if you think about that, it was more costly than the Civil War. It was more costly than World War II, which was the height of Germany, especially when Adolf Hitler was in reign at the time. It was more costly than Nam, which was a 10-year war, lasted from 55 to 65. And it was also more costly than the Gulf War, which was between America and, you know, our little Middle Eastern friends over there. That's crazy. That's crazy. The Germans initially wanted to send in only 130,000 soldiers. I don't think anybody there was expecting the battle to last almost a full year. So originally the Germans wanted to send in 130,000 men. They ended up oversending in 1.25 million men in a minimum of 50 different divisions. That's crazy. However, for the French only planned to send in 30,000 men. That changed to 1.14 million soldiers between 75 and 85 different divisions. Now, the casualties and losses for this battle, you guys are going to kick out of this. The casualties and losses for the French were an estimation of 315,000 to 542,000 men. In those numbers, an estimation of 156,000 to 162,000 were soldiers that were killed from February to December of 1916. However, for the Germans, they didn't suffer as much, but they still suffered a good amount of men. And their casualties and losses, they had 281,000 to 434,000 men. And out of that number, roughly 143,000 men were killed from February to December. Wow, that's crazy. Battle lasted for 303 days, and it ended up being a French victory. Even though the French did lose more men, it was more costly for the French. They still ended up winning. And I think that's because, for one, it was fought on French territory. And two, it was, I guess the French kind of had that motivation towards the end. They kind of got that mindset where, okay, it's on our land, we're going to take it back. And they ended up winning. So that's all I have for you guys today. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.